In this video, I'll be showing you how to review your audience data in order to exclude low-performing audiences in order to improve your cost per conversion and better refine your targeting. We're going to be doing this every 4 weeks. We're going to be doing this on the campaign level, and we're going to be setting our time frame to 10 weeks. Let's go over to Google Ads. From here, we're going to go to Audiences. Next, we're going to go to Audience Segments. You're going to click this drop-down menu. Make sure that you actually have audience segments enabled. If you haven't started tracking audience segments, I highly recommend you do this. We have a whole video on how to set up tracking audience segments. Google pretty much automates it for you. It doesn't affect your campaign. It just simply observes these audiences and reports on the data. That way we can go in and actually make these adjustments. But once again, we have a video on this. You'll need to go watch that in order to better understand that. So from here, we're going to scroll over to the right and we're going to be viewing this data by our cost per conversion. We also will review how to do this based on click-through rate and such. If you don't have enough conversion data because you're running a smaller campaign with a smaller budget, obviously you're going to have fewer conversions. It's going to be harder to get all that conversion data. So we will also show you how to do this with the click-through rate. But to get started, we're going to go ahead and scroll down to the bottom to view some of the key metrics for our audience segments in order to get a better understanding of what a good audience segment looks like for our campaign. Obviously, make sure you're inside the campaign you want to review. So right here, we can see that the average cost per conversion is around $30. Our average conversion rate is around 33%, which means for every 3 clicks, we expect 1 conversion. And then our average click-through rate is around 2.5%, but we're not as worried about that right now. So going back up to the top, we can see that only one audience segment falls into this cost per conversion of 2 to 3 times more. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for audience segments that have a cost per conversion that is 2 to 3 times higher than the average for our audience segments, because we don't want to remove anything that's lower than that because we want to allow Google to continue to optimize. But once it breaks that 2 to 3 times threshold, kind of depending on the campaign, we determine that that audience segment clearly isn't good, and we want to prevent our ads from being shown to it and prevent wasting money on it. Another thing to consider is the number of impressions and clicks that it's gotten. We need to make sure that it's gotten a significant number of impressions or a significant number of clicks or both to give it a fair shot of actually performing well. And as we can see here, it's gotten plenty of clicks, so it should have been getting way more conversions than it has. As you can see here, we expected 1 conversion for every 3 clicks. This has 14 and a third of a conversion. And you can see the click-through rate is absolutely terrible. It's got tons of impressions, just not performing well as a whole. So we want to get rid of it. In order to do this, we need to come over here and see what type it is, and then we need to see the audience segment that it is. So once we have this information, we're going to scroll down to exclusion. Well, before we actually scroll down to exclusions, we need to make sure that we remove it from the observation. So what we're going to do here is click. Actually, we don't even need to click the check mark. We'll just click this drop-down menu and click remove. We'll click confirm. Now that it's been removed, we're going to scroll down here, click edit exclusions. We're going to go to browse. We're going to go to in market because that's the type. Then we're going to go down to home and garden, then home and garden services, then landscape design. From here, we're going to click save. And once that loads in, you can see down here that we are now excluding this in-market segment. One thing to keep in mind when viewing this data is that some bad audiences won't even have a cost per conversion. They will have a 0 cost per conversion because they just are simply not even getting conversions. And so what we can see down here is one of those has that exact problem. So we actually want to filter by impressions. We want to see if there's any high impression audience segments that have 0 conversions or minimal conversions. So what we can see right off the bat is that this one has 1,000 impressions. It's got 11 clicks and 0 conversions. So we will do the exact same process here. We're going to click remove. We'll scroll down, add it to the exclusions, and we'll be good to go with that audience segment. So we'll follow that process all the way through in order to exclude all the bad audience segments. Once you do exclude a few, it's always helpful to throw another couple audience segments back in there just for Google to continue to collect data for you. And you may find some audience segments that you would never have thought your ads were showing to that turn out to be showing to them a lot, and then you know that you need to actually go in and exclude them. Additionally, you can use this data to create campaigns that actually just target specific audiences. So in order to do that, we will be creating another video on how to actually create a campaign that's dedicated to just targeting specific audience segments, because as you can see, if you get really precise, you can target specific audiences that can really lower your cost per conversion. In this example, if we started targeting just homeowners, that could be huge for us because that has half the cost per conversion that the average audience segments do. So keep in mind that this is definitely something that you can do. But at the time of making this video, we don't currently have a video out about how to target specific audiences, just how to exclude poor performing audiences. So feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have about this. We're going to look over one more campaign that has a much smaller budget so you can get a better understanding of how to do this for a campaign with a smaller budget and not enough conversions to make the necessary adjustments. So for campaigns with very low number of conversions or zero conversions, it's going to be very useful to try to filter these audience segments to be very precise in terms of the people that we want actually clicking on our ad, because obviously we have a very small budget if we're not seeing a ton of conversions, or there's something much more horribly wrong with our campaign. If we're not seeing conversions, you might want to go check out our video on how to properly set up conversion tracking. But if you just have a small budget, it's normal for you to not see many conversions over the period of time, or just simply not reach that 15 to 20 conversion threshold in order to start making accurate adjustments on certain sections of Google Ads. So in this example, we have a really small account that just doesn't have any conversions over the past 10 weeks because they just don't have the budget in order to bring in the number of conversions in order to see the conversion data for each of these audience segments. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom here and view the click-through rate data in order to determine what audience segments just aren't clicking through at a high enough rate for us to continue targeting them. So we have a 5% click-through rate, so that means we should expect 1 click for every 20 impressions. So we're really looking for anything with 40 or more impressions with 0 clicks. If it has 60 or more impressions, if it's got 1 or less, so on and so forth. So we're going to scroll up to the top to look at anything that has above 40 impressions. As we can see here, all of these audience segments fall into the correct category in terms of they have just enough conversions to be considered viable audience segments to target. Obviously, we're looking right here. This click-through rate is about half of what our average click-through rate is. Actually, it's less than half of, way less than half of what our click-through rate is for the average for these audience segments. So this is one that we can consider removing. Obviously, it's not doing a ton of damage. We've only spent $1.50 on it. It really comes down to how much you're willing to pinch pennies in order to make adjustments to your campaign. I don't recommend making this change because it's not worth the $1.50 to send your campaign back into learning mode, because once it's no longer able to target this audience segment, it's going to have to recalibrate and figure out how to better spend its bids for you. So I just don't recommend doing it because the cost benefit, it's been over 10 weeks and it's only spent $1.50, really not a significant amount of money no matter how small the campaign. So we're not really looking to pause something like that. Here we have another account that has some conversions, but it's a very highly competitive industry with more expensive cost per conversion, and they have a relatively low budget for their industry. So there's just not a lot of conversion data in order for us to work with to make adjustments. So we're going to be doing this based on their click-through rate. So scrolling down, we see that they have about a 10% click-through rate. So we expect 1 click for every 10 impressions or so. So we're really looking for click-through rates that are less than half of what this average is in order to exclude them. Typically, we're looking for higher impressions that have low click-through rates. As you can see here, this one has a really low click-through rate, but similar problem to the last audience or last campaign is that the audience really had only spent $1.50, not really worth stressing about. We don't want to send the campaign back into learning mode. In this final example, we have an account that has a decent number of conversions. It has enough for us to make some judgments about it, but we're going to be using it as an example of how to use our interactions or clicks and click-through rate in order to make audience adjustments. So what we can see here is that our interaction rate or click-through rate on average is around 4%. So we're really looking for anything that's below 2% in order to pause it. And we also want to make sure that we're pausing campaigns or pausing that we're pausing audience segments that have a significant number of clicks that are actually spending a significant amount of money and getting that really low interaction rate. So one that we would definitely want to pause is this one up here. Tons of impressions, tons of clicks, really low interaction rate, and it is spending a significant amount of money. $70 isn't insignificant for a smaller account. Another one that we have right here is this account or this audience segment that has a below 2%. This one also has a below 2%, and you can see that these add up to several $100s worth of ad spend that could probably be best spent elsewhere if we were ignoring the conversions. Obviously, as you can see here, this is getting a decent cost per conversion, so we wouldn't want to exclude this, but these two right here have really low click-through rates, 0 conversions, but right now we're not worried about the conversion data. So in this example, we would be pausing these two because their click-through rate is so low, and it is spending a significant amount of money, and it's had time to get clicks. It's clearly had enough impressions that it should be getting more clicks than it actually is. So that's a quick overview of how to use audience segments and how to exclude your poor performing audiences depending on the size of your account. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to Creekside Marketing. We're happy to answer anything that may not have been covered in this video, and we will see you in the next one.